part of mental fitness is learning what your saboteurs are. We all have saboteurs. And when you start to analyze or assess your saboteurs, you have to also educate yourself into what's called SAGE, which is the SAGE part of your brain. And the same way that you do reps in physical fitness with, let's say, weights or whatever the case may be, there are reps in mental fitness. And really, this is a training of your mind, okay, to take breaks throughout the day, maybe just 2 minutes, to bring yourself back from what we call the judge, because we all have a judge in our heads. So that's a little bit about mental fitness without giving too much away.
Welcome to Events Demystified podcast, where we explore and demystify the world of in-person, virtual, hybrid event AV production and technology by sharing insightful tips, tricks and tactics to make your events a success. This podcast is brought to you by Tree Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency. And your host is 𝐂𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬, a technical event planner and producer with almost 2 decades of hands-on technical experience in event production.
Welcome, friends, to another episode of Events Demystified podcast, your one-stop shop for tangible, technical, and planning advice for anyone in the events industry. This podcast is brought to you by Trifan Events, and I am your host, 𝐂𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬. During today's episode, we're going to talk more about mental and physical fitness, because as we know, the importance of physical fitness has many ramifications in our everyday life. One thing that sometimes we tend to forget is that mental fitness is just as important for our well-being. We do become stronger and leaner and have more energy when we use physical fitness as a means to get fit. However, functioning at a higher state mentally also requires us to be fit in order to respond to the demands of every day and also enjoy life. As discussed in a previous episode with one of my featured guests, developing optimal health can bring more positive emotions, less stress, and even a sense of achievement. The good news is we can enjoy similar benefits from developing our mental fitness. And today, it is my pleasure to bring today's guest on the air and have this conversation centered around mental fitness and how can we benefit by investing in it. Janice Cardinale, a heart-centric entrepreneur and founder of Event Minds Matter, which I will tackle this in a deeper way because this concept of mental fitness and all the strategies around it on how to have and maintain a state of well-being that helps cultivate awareness of how we think and behave and feel is extremely important, not just for everybody else, but especially for us event professionals when we go on those super long event days and are still expected to function at our best. Janice is one of the event professionals out there that has definitely made some waves in the field and has spent time in this topic more than I personally have. So bringing her on as an expert, it is my greatest pleasure. In 2020, she has been awarded the BizBash 15 over 50 Top 100 Smart Meetings Entrepreneur Women to Watch by Courtney Stanley. Another one that I am happy to report that is good to have another lady on the air that has had that award. Also, she is someone that considers herself a societal influencer, but has also been known as a heart-centric entrepreneur. She has founded Event Minds Matter in 2022, and she also writes about mental fitness and wellness for the Meetings Professional for MPI, and also writes for United Colors of Design, a lifestyle magazine. As an advocate for wellness in the event industry, her community has built pillars for education, resources, and initiatives that support a caring culture and demonstrate that the event industry can become the first most mentally fit industry. You can certainly learn more about Janice and all the amazing things that she's working on by following the links in the episode notes. And in the meantime, let's bring our guest in. Welcome to the show, Janice. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, 𝐂𝐻𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬, and I'm very excited to be here and to, be in your company.
Likewise, I am looking forward to this conversation, and I wanted to start us off with asking a very bold question. How mentally fit do you feel beginning of 2023?
Extremely mentally fit. I happen to be taking a positive intelligence course that just began a week ago, and I'm actually learning a lot from two very well-known mentally fit coaches who took their certifications out of Stanford University. So I am building these PQ reps, and I am definitely learning a lot.
Well, I look forward to maybe, stealing some tips from you that you've learned so far. For me personally, honestly, I'm tackling my mental fitness head on this year because I believe that mental fitness, just like physical fitness, as I mentioned, is just as important, and it helps me prioritize and understand and also improve, my ability to not just be creative, but also respond well, be present, and just have a better understanding of my surroundings so that I react less to what happens to me and I'm more in control. I am more productive whenever I put that forefront. And I'm so excited to learn more tips and more strategies from you because it's something that I feel like we should all invest in. It's taken me a minute to put a higher priority on it more than actually my physical fitness, because I felt like going through a journey, and the journey that I have gone through last year, it's become a byproduct, but it wasn't necessarily the focus. So I feel like a lot of us, especially going through COVID and coming on the other side, we've navigated crazy circumstances. And at the end of it all, we felt like, man, like there's areas that I need to pay attention to, I need to strengthen. And what better way to do that than beginning of the year, so I can gain that mental toughness that comes with the fit aspect of it. So I would love for you to dive more into what is mental fitness. Like, let's start with the definition of mental fitness. And as you do that, how did you get to making it an important, relevant part of yourself currently?
Last year, I wrote an article for just myself on LinkedIn, and it was a very riveting article on mental health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And from that article, what ended up happening was I got a lot of responses from people in the industry who really were resonating with what I had written about. And what happened was that I was also introduced to another woman who had been in the industry for 20 years, who had moved out of the industry due to her own mental health problems, and became a mental health worker with a very well-known company in Vancouver. And her and I, between us, spent a lot of time talking and deciding that this was a very good time to start a community for people in our industry. And not that her company focuses on the event industry, it doesn't. Her company is very governmental in Canada, but what I recognized was that there are so many people in all of North America and Europe who are really struggling with the stress and the burnout and all the rest of it. And it became more and more evident as time went on last year. So what ended up happening was people began to want to join our community because I guess there had never really been a place to talk and feel safe. So we began with Event Minds Matter. And then we began with a mission statement, which was we want to build brave spaces to amplify the industry's conversation on mental health and well-being. And that's a very interesting mission statement to make, because one of the strategies that we have found is that there aren't spaces within our industry that have been made safe, primarily in the organizations, to have those conversations. And you know as well as I do, a lot of people don't feel it's their responsibility to talk about mental health or wellness within their organizations or their teams or even individually. So we recognize the fact that a lot of education is needed, a lot of resources, a lot of tools, and getting the right information and the right education is very valuable and very purposeful. Mental fitness came to me through a couple of mentally fit coaches that I was fortunate enough to meet along the way, who had not only spoken at the World Education Conference, but I had run a talk fest with MPI and a company called Braindate E180 back in November.
Oh, that's right. I was on one of those myself. Were you part of that entire series?
Yes.
Very cool.
Like, we put that event on with the support of MPI and with the support and sponsorship of Braindate. And these two coaches, their names are Vimari, and I can't pronounce her last name, but I can certainly gladly put it up. They are partners, and they'll be on our site on LinkedIn. And Rochelle Stone. And these two women took part in that talk fest and were absolutely flabbergasted at the conversations. One thing that we did, which was highly important, that had not been done in any other kind of talk fest that MPI had ever done, or even PCMA or SITE or CANSPEP or CSAE, ASAE, was we told people that this was going to be a safe space. We told people that nothing would be recorded. We told people that it was confidential and that if they wanted to partake, they could. And if they just wanted to sit back and listen, they could. There were 44 topics. What came out of that day was they didn't want the 45-minute session to end. They wanted more in the future. And the testimonials that came in were absolutely spectacular. So we recognized then that people really are wanting to find a place that they can talk and be validated. They also are prepared to be vulnerable, knowing that it's not going to hurt them in any way, shape, or form. So part of mental fitness is learning what your saboteurs are. We all have saboteurs. And when you start to analyze or assess your saboteurs, you have to also educate yourself into what's called SAGE, which is the SAGE part of your brain. And the same way that you do reps in physical fitness with, let's say, weights or whatever the case may be, there are reps in mental fitness. And really, this is a training of your mind, okay, to take breaks throughout the day, maybe just 2 minutes, to bring yourself back from what we call the judge, because we all have a judge in our heads. So that's a little bit about mental fitness without giving too much away. I'm in that practice right now. And by the way, I didn't know what mental fitness really meant until I really got involved in this program either. And that's
I love it.
What is it? What is it people are asking?
Well, I want to hear what mental fitness for you personally, like maybe give an example of how, since you've become aware of this concept, how have you applied it personally to either face or overcome challenges? Because I mean, we all have challenges, right? If you're in the event industry, you've overcome a few challenges for sure. So I want to hear personally, how does that look like for you?
First of all, I have a sincere passion for the subject of mental health, and it means a lot to me simply because I am somebody who has experienced chemical depression and who lived through many years of hiding behind it and pretending that I was fine when I wasn't. So my story may be not different than many other people who have a real serious stress or anxiety or depressive problem. But what I've done for myself is what has made me mentally fit, which is reading, listening, taking a peer support course so I understand the language around mental health. Now I'm taking the positive intelligence course. So it's even within our community, we provide a lot of content. So that content doesn't just come off the top of our heads. That content comes from researching analytics, listening to what people have to say, listening to the clinicians and the psychiatrists, the psychologists, people who are in communities and really understand mental health. So that personally for me has been a huge change for me. Because I was always too busy. I was always too busy to stop and really think about it. The only thing is, and what I've realized now is our messaging and what we talk about on LinkedIn and in other places has to change. And I'm going to talk about the fact that I read last week from somebody who is very well known in the industry, that not only is she a hard worker, but, she had to outwork many people. and that she works in a hustle culture. And those are the two things in my mind that we want to get rid of. It's not about outworking anybody, because then what you're telling the younger generation is that for 24/7, you can work hard, hard, hard. And yet you may not get up that ladder as fast as the next person. Like, what are we saying? You have to outwork everybody to be a leader? I don't believe in that. I also don't believe in the hustle culture. I think we are very much going into a people revolution, where the people culture and the caring culture is what is really at the top and what is priority now.
So what are some strategies that you've implemented for yourself to, become more aware? As you said, education was obviously a big one, right? Anything else that you feel like it has played such a big role, in the journey that you've embarked on, that is something that you would give, as a suggestion to anyone else that's curious or is willing or wanting to embrace this, a concept of mental fitness, being mentally fit? And I mean, who doesn't? Who wouldn't want to be more strong and fit when it comes to our mental health, right?
I think, like any habit, the way we work is a habit in our industry. And I say that because every year we're the sixth most stressful job under what really is stressful jobs in my mind. And the truth of the matter is we don't have to be that way. We've put ourselves in that choice of being. And our roots are very deep in it. And it's very hard to change old habits. They don't die. So unless you're being educated at work, or you have a benefit program to educate you, then you're not getting the strategies. So my feeling is, if organizations, and this is my feeling, okay, this is what I've done. I believe that we should highlight the companies that are showing initiatives that care about their people and what they do to care. Instead of talking about the negatives, I want to talk about the positives, okay? Here are companies that have made solutions that were always caring, that when COVID happened, the first thing that they did was they wanted to make sure their people were fine, okay? Not a lot of companies did that. So those who did should be rewarded or talked about or something, because we need the leaders and we need the followers. The other thing about all of this is that it's a personal choice. I can take a horse to water, but I can't make it drink. All I can do is give the information, show where the education is available, and I hope that C-suite leadership will find the budget to do it, because it's not a fortune. And the same way over the years that people get taught how to sell, how to market, do this, do that, and they bring in programs and speakers and this, that, and the other, this should be handled the same way. I just think that because we've only just really started talking about it in this last year in a way that we've never discussed it before, because it was never a topic for a conference. It was never a topic for a meeting. People paid lip service to it, and everybody had, the wellness lounge and this, that, and the other thing. But that's not real mental fitness. That's relaxation. It's like meditation. It puts you in a relaxing state, but it does not give you the tools to deal with your stress automatically. You have to build that up over time. You have to want to take that course to do it.
And honestly, I feel like there's been a level of shame and guilt surrounding it. Like, if I'm an event professional that is hired to do a specific job at a high level, right, of execution, planning, execution, production, all the things, if I come to the table and I say that I struggle with anxiety and I struggle just being there present because there's this rock on my chest that I can barely support its weight because that's the level of stress that I'm feeling, my credibility as a professional goes down. So there's this level of I'm afraid even to admit to myself, let alone out loud to everyone else, that I'm struggling to make today happen, So I feel like COVID is when everybody sort of like a unison voice came to say, we all struggle. We all admit to ourselves that we got a problem, and it's no longer worth it hiding it under the rug and pretending that it's all great and it's all beautiful, when actually that's so far away from the reality that we're all facing with, And I come from a culture personally where mental health has never been the conversation of anything, any conversation whatsoever. You got to put up with it. Oh, you're depressed? What is that? Complete ignorance of of the topic, right? Like I remember like having postpartum depression after having my son and completely ignoring it as it doesn't even exist because that's not a topic that I was aware of. Like, no, my mind is making that up. I must be feeling like this because I didn't eat today, or I didn't do that, or I didn't do. It's always linked to some action that I didn't do. It was never something like, but it could be something that I'm feeling. It could be something chemical, as you mentioned, you're struggling with. It could be something that there's a solution to it other than ignoring it or feeling guilty about admitting to it.
This is a global issue, the one you're talking about right now, the fear and the silence. So this is something that will continue on for a long time to come. One of the bigger problems with what you're talking about is that people to this day are still being let go for things like they have ADHD. I can tell you a story that still makes my hair stand on end, which is a young woman who I know who actually was awarded a Smart Meetings Rising Star last year. She had worked at a technology company for 2 years, was doing fantastic until a new boss came in. And this boss was not excited about the way she was working. And she was honest with HR about her ADHD because she was the type of girl you could look at a computer, she would get bored. But if she was looking at 5 computers, she could like multi the whole thing. And they ended up pushing her out and then making her sign an NDA that she wouldn't say a word. And this particular technology company has a reputation for this. And only because she had had a new baby and was moving into a new house did she not take them to task, which had she would have won. I tell you that these are the kinds of things that upset me dearly when I hear them, because I think, how in the heck can you do this to somebody?
Yeah.
In the fall, the World Health Organization came out with the very first policies and procedures with regards to mental health. And one of the policies that is being put out there is that you cannot let go of people because of their mental health. You can give them an option to maybe move into a different position that might not be as stressful as the one that they, applied for or something, but you cannot let them go, because inevitably they'll be taken to court and the employer will lose. So the fact that this has gone on for so long and has affected so many people, it's just that you don't hear much about it. But I do. I have heard so many stories. I could go on and tell stories for an hour in your podcast that would make people's hair curl.
Yeah.
And that's what's changed me.
Mm-hmm. And it's this ethical idea of like, they would find a different reason for letting them go so they don't get, like you said, a lawsuit on their hands, just to get rid of somebody struggling instead of creating a support system to help them. And the fact that she got to where she was in the story example that you gave, it tells me that she did great up to this moment in time where, like, if you've already got a baby, you've moved and you've got all the circumstances around you, there's a few things that are going to impact you regardless if you're female or male. Like, this applies to guys too. You go through some life changes, like say maybe a health situation, your performance could very much change drastically from day to day. Yet sometimes I feel like women get the shorter end of the stick in many of those situations, as in, well, we'll find someone else to replace her with because now she's got her life set for whatever, how many years that is. In events production, especially in my field, I deal with this all the time, like to the point where, you get to apply for a new job and nobody's going to ask you straight up, are you planning to have any kids in the next year or so? But they'll find a way to phrase that in a way that it will give them the answer, even if you didn't say it out loud, right? Because they want to know, can I count on you being here? Or are you going to be like, I don't know, taking care of small humans in a year from now? I have just as much right as anybody else to be here and to be doing this job or to apply for this position. And that can be something that's held against me. And the same way with mental health, there's so many different little ways in which a company can hold that against you, especially if you're honest about it. If you're not honest, you're going to try to hide it, and then you'll never get the help that you need.
So here's my comment to you. I agree with everything you're saying. I understand what you're saying, and you're right. I mean, women are constantly attacked for just being female, but the thing is with all of it is that there's not an understanding of what mental health really is and what people are going through, nor do people really care. That's why it has to be an individual's choice as to what they want to do for themselves. Like usually it takes somebody falling off the curb eventually to really impact their minds and what they want to do for themselves. But it's unfortunate that it has to get to that point, but it does. However, a lot of what the industry does is Band-Aid, prescriptions, as far as I'm concerned. It's not meant for anything to be long lasting. I also think that if companies are hiring coaches when it comes to mental health, that it's not leadership coaches that they're looking for. They need to have mental health and wellness coaches or mentally fit coaches. We had that conversation online, actually, not so very long ago, because both myself and others within my community are very concerned about the amount of people who are out there selling, their brand of wellness, not necessarily the brand that people need. But that's another subject for another time. I think, to be honest with you, men and women are suffering. And I think, again, we're trying to bring them into safe spaces so that they can be themselves.
Yeah.
The one thing I see in our industry is they're more authentic people, and people want to talk to their truth. People are not so afraid. They're slowly but surely, they're coming out of the woodwork, and people are being honest online and with people they don't know. That's called advocacy. The more people that advocate, the more people that will come out.
Yeah.
So, look what she did, or, oh my God, she's talking. Oh, that means I'm okay. I can talk about it now. And I can't believe how many people are talking. And that, by the way, to me is fantastic. That's the greatest thing that's happened since COVID, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It's the step in that direction that we hope to get to, and hopefully sooner than later. Then following up with that, having some type of solutions or some type of help available to anyone that's struggling. Because I feel like there's also a bit of, yes, I can go online and I can share my struggles, right? But if that's all there is to it, it's still me here struggling.
Of course. Of course. Absolutely. But remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you have to take baby steps before you can take the giant steps. So, it's not even been a year, for example, since our community was formed. Our community was formed last February. But when I think of where we began and where we are today, it's like night and day. We don't operate with a website. We operate off LinkedIn. There's enough of a social network on LinkedIn that we can affect change through content and through education and resources and where people can find things. We're not running this as a business. Our community is full of like-minded event professionals who, have all had a story to tell. They all feel the same way, and we're like a family. We're a community of family. That's what I'm going to tell you right now. And, we talk about these things. And in fact, when we first began, we did our own work on ourselves because we needed to understand exactly what it is that everybody else would want to understand out there. The other thing is, if you've not been in our field of practice, you can't really understand what it's like. Yeah. So, when you go to a therapist, a psychologist, or whatever, you usually have a more serious mental health issue, and that makes sense. But if you've brought in, somebody like that to speak to a group like us who are struggling with stress and burnout and the rest of it, it doesn't always translate, Yeah. When somebody hears your story or my story, then they start to feel comfortable within themselves to tell their story.
Yeah.
And one thing we know about, social media is that it's all about storytelling.
Yeah, that's how we connect. I love that. Right. Well, let's take a quick brief break right now to acknowledge our sponsor, because I would love to tap more into some of those stories and continue our conversation. It's something that I feel like we should allocate all the time to, because there's so much more to be said about it. We'll be right back. We'll continue this. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifanevents.com. Coming back to our conversation with Janice Cardinale, a heart-centric entrepreneur with a passion for mental fitness and wellness. Janice, it's somewhat still beginning of the year, at least at the time of the recording. And for me, a new year always means new possibilities and an opportunity for all of us to start all over again. If we need to do things differently, maybe more efficiently. And personally, after I have embarked on this quite successful fitness journey last year into natural bodybuilding, and honestly, at the prime age of 40, that was quite the fit in the middle of the busiest event season that I can recall. I feel like post-COVID, everything it's different than what it used to be before. And what I realized is how much of that almost impossible fit to pull off has been intuitively really a strategy that I had to take on, a coping mechanism, if you will, that I needed to just have in order to make it out alive, honestly, during such a crazy turn of events. I mean, the traveling that came with that, the planning, the running events, the running from east to coast, living, out of my suitcase. It's been crazy. Okay. So it's almost like looking back in retrospect, I'm like, I can't believe that actually happened, but it has impacted me in so many different ways. So much so that by December, I was like, I need a break. Like, I'm so burned out. This realization how important mental fitness is. I might be physically fit, but mentally, I'm just worn out. I'm exhausted. I am so done. I just wanted to sleep for a month. Unfortunately, I didn't have the benefit of sleeping for a month. So instead, I had to do an audit, like emotional, mental audit, and look at the things that I wanted and I wasn't willing to say yes to versus the things I was going to start to say no to. And as you said, like hustling is kind of been in my veins, and it's not something to be proud of, but it's something that it's just part of the culture of you run a business, you run several different projects, you have a family, you do a billion of other things on the side. You're constantly on the run. Like, that's the reality of things. So as we look in 2023, and we both agree that mental and physical fitness is extremely important for us individuals, but also for organizations. What is 2023 then looking like for organizations that would like to implement wellness into their culture in a way that benefits all stakeholders?
So I respect and acknowledge what you've just said about what's happened to you in the last year. And that's obviously a very common story amongst people in the industry. One of the things that I will say about mental health and wellness, it always was there before COVID, and we did hustle our rear ends off long before COVID ever came. What happened was when COVID came, it gave everybody a chance to really step back and think about their health and think about their families and think about the things that they hadn't had a chance to really delve into for many, many years. So coming out of it, I think that there's been a lot of education around it. People are speaking about it. But I think that people really want to become the best version of themselves. And I think that self-care and self-awareness are top of mind when it comes to this area that we're talking about. Because if you're not self-aware and if you don't care sincerely about your health overall, because we know that mental fitness affects our physical being. There's not even a question about it. I mean, if we were talking about cancer, for example, or diabetes or something like that, people give you, yes, you need the time off, you're going to, you're going to be okay. But what's happened here is that, people are working remotely. I think that employers are less trusting of their people, which is a very big problem. And this is part of an archaic way of thinking on the side of the elder generation. And there's a big divide happening now. The divide being that in this next decade, most of even myself will be finished. We won't be in the industry. We won't be, the talking people of it or anything. Then you have this whole younger generation, which is completely disinterested in the way that we worked. Okay, which is why we saw so much conversation around quiet quitting and the great resignation, which those are just words. My feeling when I started hearing that was we as an adult culture have to mentor these young people. We have the responsibility. What is it that we're doing wrong that people are leaving our organizations? Like, instead of looking at that way. And when we talk about people being interviewed today, in my opinion, it's been a 360-degree change. And I say that because I feel that the younger generation is interviewing the employer now. They want to work for a culture that they deem fit.
Yeah.
And that could be from a nutrition point of view, a sleep point of view, 4-day work weeks, having that extra week holiday recognized, and the trust, okay, that if they're going, I mean, many companies have people working from home. And you've heard that people working from home are actually working more than when they were in the office, okay? But that's a choice that person makes. But it's the problem of an elder who doesn't believe that person is working that causes all the stress and the drama and all the rest of it. But I do think, I mean, I remember when we used to interview people when I was in the business at the Idea Hunter, and I remember taking the person out of the interview and asking them to go in and meet each person for 5 minutes. Ask them whatever you want. I'm not even in the room. And you know what? People said they'd never done that before. It wasn't like rocket science. It was just thinking authentically human. Like, if you don't belong here, you're going to hear it from the people who work for me. You know what I'm saying? So now when they go in, sure, they want to know what their benefits are. They want to know what sustainable practices the companies have. They want to know a lot of things that we didn't care about. So there is a huge shift. There's no question. So you have to really keep an open mind as a business owner as to, feeling out the environment and space that these people are coming into.
Yeah, it's almost like the table has somewhat turned. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I posted something on my Instagram story, something similar, where there's this, person going to an interview and they're being asked all the questions. But at one point during this interaction, the questions turn. And the person is asking the interviewer, how about this? How about that? How about that? And the interviewer is like taken back. It's like, wait a second. Now I need to answer all these questions. And based on this candidate would say yes or no, right? So in so many ways, the tables have turned for sure. And it's a benefit of, the younger generation to have that option that I personally didn't have. I don't know how many times you felt like you had, the upper hand in an interview to say, wait a second, I would actually like to know if this is even the right place for me to be. Later in my career, and especially once you gain some experience and you have, some expertise under your belt, you have a little bit more leverage, to have those conversations. But in the beginning, it was more like, oh yeah, thank you. Oh, that sounds great, But then you start learning you have to advocate for yourself. And you have to be aware, like you said, of the things that are important to you and the things that would either make it or break it. At one point, I realized for myself, like, I am not employable and I'm okay with it. I'd rather be, working for myself and doing all the things based on my own schedule versus going and working for someone else. Even that seems like a more safer, secure place to be, versus if I work, I have a way to pay my bills. If I decide to take the whole month off, there's probably nothing coming in unless I have a way to have some type of it's whatever I do with my own hands that's going to happen. Now, obviously, there's different strategies that go into that, but it all goes hand in hand with like, how fit will I be physically and mentally to be able to perform the top of my capacity, regardless of my age? Because I want to be as present and as full of energy now as I am, 30 years from now. I have to invest in this one body that I have that I don't have a backup of. Is the only thing that I've got, And a lot of people, like you said, they've had a little bit of downtime to be able to realize what's important for them, but also realize how short of a life we all have, and how everything that we have and we so think that it's there can be taken away in a moment's time,
Right.
by a virus, by something that we've never heard of before,
Well, when you're younger, you don't think that way. When you're older, you think that way. I'm in my 60s, so I can tell you, I still have a lot of energy, and my mind often thinks like a 30-year-old, or at least I think so. Like when I turned
Because
my
age
birthday
is
this
just a
year,
number, Janice.
I reversed my number when I turned 63 this year. Now I'm 36.
36.
So
There you go. Just
you know
ask
what?
people not to do the math when they tell them, I also happen to have like 40 something years of experience in the field.
Right.
And they're like, wait a second, this makes no sense. Like, don't worry about the math. Don't worry about the math. So from your vantage point of view, Janice, what are some emerging trends that event professionals should keep an eye on for their events in 2023?
Emerging trends. We're seeing a lot of that in hospitality, actually. I think that, based on our industry, retreats, for example, are becoming extremely popular, and they focus more on wellness, nutrition, and eating, and all those kinds of things. I think also that, from a mental health point of view, that people are interested in having coaches and or speakers into their organizations. They're interested in learning a little bit more about their employees, not just what was filled out on an application, but taking a greater interest and having more conversation rather than less. I think that C-suite leaders need to do a lot more listening rather than a lot of talking. I think that you learn a lot from your employees and your, whatever age they are, but you do have to listen. If you want to be part of a culture of caring, which is where we're trying to go now, then without listening, you'll never know. I also still feel, to be honest with you, and I can say this because I'm at that age and stage, that it's time for people to retire and let a younger generation come in. I mean,
isn't that hard though? I mean, that's a hard thing to do for someone that is like, I need to have my hands on this thing.
Well, but that's a perfectionist and a control freak and all the rest of it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's yeah. So, and I get that because I've been there, done that. But I also see the advantages of bringing in younger people who understand digital transformation, who understand how AI is going to benefit their businesses. I think that where the older generation tends to go is, I don't know it, I don't understand it, I don't want it. We don't have to fix anything, it's all fine. This is where the great divide happens. So if I'm really thinking about the next 10 years, our whole generation will be gone.
Yeah.
And your generation will be leading. The people below your generation will be leaders. I remember back when I was at my company, The Idea Hunter at the time, over the years, what I started to see was the people at the table that we were making presentations to were slowly changing. There were people's faces I didn't recognize. Today, if I go to an event, which I rarely go to these days because I feel I've done that more than my fair share of times, I don't know anybody. I'm happy to network with anybody at any age, and I certainly mentor students because I sit on a board at a college here for creative design and event management. But I mean, the faces have really, really changed. And the thing that I hear and that I see is a very enthusiastic generation who wants to solve and find solutions for big time problems like sustainability, like mental health, these kinds of things that bear a tremendous amount of importance within the industry.
Yeah. So we need more people like you, Janice, that are open-minded and well aware that they are not the gatekeepers of those places, and they need to allow for a younger, fresher, creative thinking outside of the box, if there is a box, or break the box, whatever, and allow for those solutions to come forward from places that sometimes can be distressful, because you're thinking you don't have enough experience to understand this issue. You haven't been around enough to have an entire rounded well view of this problem, right? But sometimes not having all the variables can give you that solution that you didn't think about, because you're thinking with everything in mind. And if this happens, that happens, and it's like everything is almost like a domino effect, and we can't do that because of it, right? Like I said, for me, every beginning of the year is like a new opportunity to do something different. And I take that personally, but I also take it as far as my business goes or my business endeavors. Like this year, I have a completely new focus, and I am so excited about it, because I don't want to be doing the same thing every single year. That's not what excites me. What excites me is something new. Like there's more opportunities, there are more new things to do. And I don't want to just drive myself into the ground doing the same old thing in the same old way. Where's the excitement in that, you know?
Well, that's what makes you a leader, and other people will follow her, because, it's you have an interest in change and innovation. I have an interest in the same things. I practice mental health in the sense that this is my passion. Okay. But I used to write about trends when I was in the business, and I still love trends. I write about AI now. And in fact, I'm co-chairing GMID in Toronto this year, one day ahead of the real GMID, and it's all about digital transformation and AI.
That's awesome.
I've been doing a lot of studying of that because I'm interested in it. I may not be able to use the Mid-Journey programs. I'm not a visual artist, but I am creative. And
That's
so
awesome.
I appreciate what people are doing and how they're using it. And I see the future from it.
And you're leading the way for event professionals, that you lead by example. I can be in my 60s and I can still be at the top of whatever the emerging trend is and be excited about it instead of being afraid of it. Because a lot of people will go into, oh, I don't understand. It's like my mom. I'm trying to get her to video chat. It's so hard. I'm like, how can it be so hard? Just follow these instructions. And it's still, you get that, wall of, I don't want to try it. It's too hard.
I know. I have a father that's still alive, God bless him, the age of 89. You have no idea how many times I show him things on the phone. And by the way, I didn't grow up in a generation of the computer, by far. I was born in 1960. I mean, come on. But I remember what everybody said when it started. No way. It's not going to happen. I was part of that generation, right?
So that's what you're saying now to everyone that says the metaverse, that could never be something that's going to happen to our industry. We're so far-fetched from that reality, right?
Exactly. But mental fitness will become as popular as going to a gym.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. It'll take a decade, but I guarantee, as sure as I'm sitting here, that every organization will find the protocols and put them in place to help their people, because you need productive people in today's day and age. And I'll tell you, you need smart people. Nobody wants
and curious. You want curious people that are willing to delve into something that they don't know everything about, but they're willing to learn more.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, digital transformation is also going to drive a lot of people out of business. That's a fact, whether people want to hear it or not. I mean, I've been studying 2030 to 2050 for a very long time. It used to be part of my trend content. And they said a long time ago, humans will not be as valuable as AI and cloud computing and all the other things that are going on that are going to change the way our future looks completely. So if you just want to get the noise out of your head and you don't want to hear anybody's voices on the subject, it's easy to do. You just focus on the same thing you've always focused on and don't change. Don't veer this way, that way, or the other way.
And you might just end up like the FM radios or AM radios in the world of Spotify.
Right, exactly. Of which, by the way, I still listen to AM and FM because of my age, maybe. I don't know. I like it.
Hey, I come from a radio background, okay? Radio is, in so many ways, my first love. So I get it. I get it. Although I do listen to Spotify a whole lot more now.
I bet. Yeah, I know.
So as we're trying to land this plane, Janice, I would love to hear as you mentioned, in the next, few years, not even decade, I think it's going to happen sooner than that even, organizations will see this as something that they do have to figure out their strategies, practices to implement in a way that supports of their employees, but even us in the event industry in a way that supports not just us event professionals, but also our attendees. Now, with that, obviously, there's a little cost that comes associated with it, right? To have all this wellness implemented, to produce events that have specific experiences embedded and do things differently, that comes with a price tag that some attendees might be wondering, like, why do I need to be investing or supportive of this? Why should that matter to our event attendees, not just us event professionals that are starting to look at it as something that, yes, it's important and we definitely need to put our money on it?
That's a loaded question. The truth of the matter is, in my opinion, I think that based on what I'm reading from all the industry publications, all the media, all the people on LinkedIn and everything, is that this is a top priority right now, wellness. It's also a billion-dollar industry. Let's face it, okay? There's a lot of money to be made in wellness. So this is also a caution to everybody listening to this to be very careful, buyer beware. But I will say this is that I think that with it being a top priority, you've got way more of an audience, way more attention, and people do want to solve how they feel. And a lot of people don't even really have the time to think about how they feel. And this is a personal choice, right? We went over that before. You decided to go to the gym this past year, even though you were running like a maniac. People will do what they selfishly want to do for themselves. Okay. If they want to work 24/7, and end up later on in life not having really anything, then God bless them. I was into that rat race, by the way.
Yeah.
I was guilty of it too. I thought that my business defined me. It was only when I semi-retired that I realized it didn't define me at all. This is what defines me. This is part of my legacy. So, if you start a little bit earlier with your legacy, you can achieve a lot of things personally that you can take with you. One thing I always said about for me is I don't want to die and people say, oh yeah, she was really good in the fashion business, which I was in for 16 years. She sold great entertainment. Like she really had talented Canadian entertainment. Like really? What does that mean? Right? It doesn't mean anything because people don't remember that stuff. People remember what you give. And I listened to a speaker very recently on privilege. And I think that many of us in this industry have privilege. Whether we're doing good, bad, or indifferent, we still have privilege. And how we use that privilege is the most important thing that we can take with us and give to other people. And, while we're focused on our industry, there's a whole other world that's suffering in silence with all kinds of different things. So you either get on board or you don't.
Yeah. It will change your life regardless if you, agree to follow this or follow whatever you're doing, right? It's like going back to the accumulation of habits that stack on top of each other hopefully will translate into not just a life well lived, but also leaving behind a legacy that you're proud of. The main point there, like, what will I be remembered for at the end of my life? And to answer that question individually is so important because it will dictate some of the choices you're making today, not tomorrow, but today. And just to leave, I guess, one last thought with our audience, because this has been such a great conversation. I mean, there's so much more to be said when it comes to physical and mental fitness. I would love to touch on your latest endeavor. We touched on it just a little bit in the beginning. As the founder of Event Minds Matter, would you give us a glimpse into when you first started, with the mission and the vision behind it? Would you leave our audience with more rounded understanding of how that is a tool and resource for them, but also some practical tips on how to plan for wellness at their events in the year that follows or the years to come?
Okay, so when it comes to Event Minds Matter, I mean, it's still a work in progress. I am a believer in anything organic. I could have raced towards a lot of things, but I didn't. I took baby steps. And I think organizations will have to take baby steps and test things out that work for them. Like there's a lot of conversation around a 4-day work week, as an example. I agree with a 4-day work week.
Me too.
I do.
Wait, I'm my own boss. I should have a say in it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you do what you want to do, but think about your employees first, right?
Yeah.
It's a selfish world. So, people who really don't care would never have a 4-day work week, because if they're the elder generation, God forbid you take a day off, right?
Right.
But, again, I remember listening to LinkedIn's CEO, Ryan Rosalinsky, who said the first thing they did was ask people how they're doing, how they're feeling. In my community, that's something that I do. If I don't hear from somebody for a week or two, I want to know if they're okay. It's an empathetic way of leading. And I think that empathetic leadership is very in demand today. And I think that being a caring person, it's either in your DNA or it's not. Because I can tell you that managing this community is a full-time job for me. There are times that I think I'm working harder than when I had my business. And I'm not making any money doing it, by the way, which is fine. I didn't get into this.
Managing any type of people, any type of community is a lot of work, especially like you said, if you care.
Because if all volunteers, just like in an association, okay? The only thing is that I've learned to be heart-centric with everybody. I've learned to create boundaries like they have. I've learned to not have expectations of everybody. I've learned that some people just don't have the capacity, and I accept all of that. The one thing I always make sure is I never close the door. I always keep my door open. If somebody's leaving because they can't handle it, they always know the door's open if and when they choose to maybe come back. Everybody has a value and a purpose. And what's happened with us is we're not just running blindsided here. We have committees within the community. There are people who handle education. There are people who handle the resources and tools. There are people who handle the brilliant moments of the companies that are showing initiatives. I'm sort of overseeing it all, plus social media, and I'm looking for new partners. That's what's important to me right now, is building. I want to be at live shows. That we've all been virtual. So, I have people traveling to different conferences and events that they can speak at. And I don't make it about Janice Cardinale. I may have founded it, but without the people who are in my community, there's no way it would be where it is today. That's why when somebody comes out, like Monday, for example, we have Meet Minds Monday, because we've introduced each person from our community and they've written about themselves and why they joined. So when you tell authentic stories like that, that's the greatest thing that anybody can do in their organization, is be authentic and make the connection so that people feel that you really care. And it's not hard. It's a mindset. There's a lot more harder things in life than being a caring leader. So what can I say? If I could change the world with my nose, like Bewitched way back when, it'd be great.
So let's leave our audience with a couple of practical tips on how to plan for wellness as we conclude our conversation. And then maybe, just because I just heard you say, you're looking for partners, if anybody is interested in joining the community, is there a way to do it? Is there a process? What's the best way to do that?
To get a hold of me, because we do sign NDAs of confidentiality, and we do have things that we're doing. I mean, we don't have anybody in the community who's floating around. Everybody has a task. And we help each other and support each other when people are away, this, that, or the other thing. But that's what it's about. And, a lot of people get very nervous with the thought of, oh my God, I got to volunteer. I got to do one more thing. If they really are interested in being a part of it, then they'll tell me that. And when they get the NDA, if they change their mind because they feel they're not quite ready, that's fine too. Whether we grow a lot of people into the community as members is one thing. Okay, I'm interested in followers, people who are reviewing and reading our things, and who can come back and really feel like we gave them some information that any other place they might not have gone, because we're being honest. Okay, we're telling real stories that people can relate to. That's the tips.
So grow the community. If you're not ready to volunteer and have responsibilities, maybe don't join it. But still, put the word out there that it's a resource for anyone that would like to learn more about it.
I can tell you it's changed a lot of people's lives. We meet twice a month, every 2 weeks. Okay. And it's, we're very detailed and organized that way. And we don't have a problem if you can't join the meeting because you have another meeting or you're on an event. Okay, no problem. But if you don't show up at all for a month, I want to know what happened to you. Where are you? Yeah. Is everything okay? Yeah. Right? So that's called caring leadership.
And honestly, if you don't want to be, in that position to give somebody recap of why is it that you didn't come, maybe it's not for you, and that's okay. Yeah, you don't have to be doing all the things. And I think a lot of us, in 2023 are definitely reviewing some of the things that we want to be involved with and some of the things
Yes.
that we should let go of. And if this is something that you want to be involved with because you're intentional and wanting to help and be caring of other people that are struggling, this is the right place to be. And I'll have the links in the episode notes for anyone that's interested and would like to learn more. And as far as our audience wanting to connect with you personally, Janice, would you give them a way to do that?
They can reach me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I can give you I believe I gave you my email address. They can reach me that way too.
Okay,
So
I will have those links in the episode notes for anyone that's listening. Make sure that you check the episode notes. I don't necessarily prefer to give emails out because that's
no
just a
problem.
recipe for spamming. And honestly, personally, I don't need that.
Yes.
But there is, a way to, for you to connect with Janice on LinkedIn. There's also a QR code that I'm going to be plastering on the graphics. And I know we talked about LinkedIn a lot, but I want to make it available to anyone that's looking at Instagram. They're on Instagram too. I know a lot of people that I connect with on Instagram, they're like, what is LinkedIn? And that's the younger generation that you talked about, right? For them, LinkedIn is a place for old people. And to me, that is the best place to be as a professional, period. I've never made as many connections and as many friendships, honestly, as I made on LinkedIn and any of the other social networks. And let me tell you, I'm on quite a few and I'm pretty active.
I agree with you. And by the way, I've just connected with somebody who's going to bring us onto TikTok because I think that's important too.
I just got onto TikTok and I'm like, I think I'm too old for this.
I'm not doing it, by the way. I'm not.
I am having fun.
By the way, I like watching it, and I'm going to have a new young girl doing it. That's the greatest thing about our community. Males, females, young ones, older ones, mid-age. We're from everywhere.
And you use the skills of people with what they're passionate about, and that's fantastic. Like, you want to volunteer to be the TikTok person? Guess what? Assuming that you're a responsible adult.
Right. I'd like to think I am.
Eventually, hopefully, we're all going to get there. Right now, this adult thing is troublesome. So
we'll get there. We just have to be very patient. And you said something earlier, and I really believe this. You're being intentional. When you're intentional and you set your intention, you can do anything you want to do. Not everybody can get to intention that easily. It takes time, practice.
Yeah. Commitment, discipline, consistency, so many things, just all wrapped inside that one word.
Right. Yeah.
This was such a pleasure, Janice, to have this conversation with you. Thank you for making the time to actually be on the air and just talk from your experience and just be authentic about how important mental fitness is, not just to you personally, but also as an industry, why that should matter to all of us. In closing, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. And again, it's another conversation that it has to be had and it has to be held as a priority as we move into this year, but it shouldn't just be left there. I think there always should be some actionable steps that involve any change. Like, if we just talk about it, but nothing comes out of it, then what's the point, right? So I hope that whoever is interested in actually taking the steps to make the changes that we talked about during today's episode, those are the people that we want to hear from. Those are the people I honestly want to connect with, because those are people that not just talk about things, they actually do things. And you're just a perfect example of someone that saw it and felt it, lived it, and said, you know what, I want to do something about it. And we need more leaders like that. We need more servant leadership like that we can look up to and we can ask questions. In my industry, I haven't had a female mentor all the 20 years that I've been in the industry. And I saw that as a handicap. But it brought me to the point where I realized that I couldn't be the only one feeling that way. There must be others that are feeling possibly the same way. And I need to step up. And I need to become that person for people that now they're hungry to learn from. It's like, oh, I see myself as this person, but if I cannot figure out the journey to get there, it's so difficult to just have to bump left and right and retrace my steps just to be able to go in this one direction. Having you as a mentor in this space, and there's a few others that, if you're interested to learn more about, I would get in touch with Janice to find out and what are the right resources. Like you said, just like fitness, like for me, it was such a revelation when I got into natural bodybuilding, how much miscommunication and how much marketing is done in that one field alone, and how much fluff is built around it, and how much is not good for you, not healthy. Like you see some influencer on social media doing certain things and you think they're doing it the right way. And when you dive deeper, you realize that's not a healthy lifestyle that I want to embark on. And the same thing could be said about wellness and mental fitness. Not everything that's out there is going to be good for you. And being able to discern the truth from all the other things that are just sold to us on a daily is so important in the days and months and years to come. Thank you, Janice. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing all the articles and all the conversations that you're starting. Yes, LinkedIn is the main platform that Janice operates on, but it doesn't mean that you can find Events Mentor on Instagram and Twitter. I believe Twitter was the other channel, correct? Facebook. There we go. Facebook.
Not on Twitter.
Not on Twitter. We're staying away from Twitter. No Twitter.
I'm not driving an electric car either. But thank you, 𝐂𝐚𝐻𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬. And by the way, you're as much as a societal leader as I am. And you can take a lot of award from that, from your heart.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, friends, this is it for today's episode. I know we went a little bit over time, but that's okay. I always love to have those conversations more in depth because there's so much to be had when we discuss topics that are really important for all of us. So for anyone that's made it all the way till the end, I almost feel like we need to give them some type of a reward and make sure that you stay tuned for what is coming up next, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're growing. Yay. I know. I'm celebrating every single one. So I just moved all the assets to a brand new channel. So now it's like, the growing pains of that. It's real. Make sure to subscribe, stay in touch, and don't miss what's coming up next and all the amazing guests that are being featured. Thank you, Janice. And for everyone else, wonderful rest of your day, whatever it is, day or night, whatever you're listening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about Tree Fan Event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.